Wealth, poverty, political division, war, conflict, towering skyscrapers, and massive slums. The Middle East has all of it, and so much of it is connected to the one thing you're hearing about more than ever right now: oil. Have you ever wondered why so much crude oil is concentrated in the Arab countries of the Middle East? Before we get into that, we need to understand how oil is actually formed. Gasoline and diesel both come, in general, from crude oil. Hundreds of millions of years ago, the remains of living things all across Earth were gradually buried deep underground. Over tens of millions, and in some cases hundreds of millions of years, those remains built up layer by layer and became part of thick sediment deposits. As more and more layers of Earth piled on top, the pressure kept increasing. The temperature rose too. And over an extremely long period of time, that intense heat and pressure slowly transformed this buried organic material into crude oil and coal. Now, you might be wondering something. If living things existed all over Earth back then, why is crude oil found so heavily in the Middle East? Even though both coal and crude oil were formed from the remains of living things buried under layers of Earth over a very long time, there is still a major difference between them. Coal was formed from the remains of plants that once lived on land. Crude oil, on the other hand, was formed from the remains of microscopic organisms such as plankton and algae, or sea moss, that lived in the ocean. And that brings us to the obvious question. If crude oil was formed in the ocean, then why do we find so much of it today in Middle Eastern countries, where most of the land is now covered by desert? What if I told you that around 100 million years ago, many of these desert regions were actually covered by ocean? It may sound hard to believe, but it's true. In ancient times, that ocean was called the Tethys Sea. Rivers flowing into the Tethys Sea carried huge amounts of minerals and nutrients. Because of that, microscopic organisms, especially plankton, grew there in enormous numbers and lived densely throughout that sea. When those organisms died, their remains sank to the seafloor and were buried there. But here's the important part. Not every buried mass of marine organisms turns into oil. For oil to form, the conditions have to be just right. The area has to be rich in organic material, the burial has to happen quickly, and the environment has to be low in oxygen. Those were exactly the conditions found in the Tethys Sea. Tectonic activity, especially rift basins and extensional tectonics, together with sediments carried by ancient river systems from surrounding land masses, helped cover that organic material very quickly, with thick layers of mud, sand, and salt, sometimes thousands of meters deep. That rapid burial kept the organic material from being exposed to oxygen near the surface. At the same time, some deep basins in the Tethys Sea had stagnant water with very little circulation. That created oxygen-poor conditions on the seafloor. Without much oxygen, bacteria could not fully break down the organic material. Over time, under intense pressure and heat, that buried material was transformed into oil and natural gas, the same resources we extract today. That is why areas that were once part of the floor of the Tethys Sea later became some of the largest oil-producing regions in the Middle East. So, if crude oil was formed under the ocean floor, how did it end up on land? To answer that, we need to look at how Earth itself is built. The surface of our planet is divided into massive tectonic plates. These plates are not fixed in place. Deep inside Earth, the interior remains extremely hot, and parts of it behave like slow-moving molten material. The continents sit on top of this restless system. Because heat inside the planet keeps material moving, those tectonic plates are constantly shifting, usually at a speed of about 1 to 13 centimeters per year. That may sound tiny, and on a human timescale it is, but over millions of years, that slow movement becomes enormous, and when entire continents move toward each other, the result can be dramatic. It can lift land upward, reshape whole regions, and trigger some of the most powerful earthquakes on Earth. Around 50 million years ago, the Indian plate slammed into the Eurasian plate. That massive collision helped create the Himalayas. Before that happened, the Tethys Sea lay between those landmasses. As the tectonic plates in that region kept moving, the Arabian plate eventually collided with the Eurasian plate, pushing parts of the ancient seafloor above sea level. Over time, that uplift helped form the region we now call the Middle East. And when that land rose, it brought with it the oil and natural gas that had formed there long before. That is the main reason the Middle East ended up with such enormous reserves of crude oil compared with most other parts of the world. Right now, no one can say with complete certainty how long Earth's oil resources will last. But one thing is clear, this black gold has been one of the biggest reasons the Middle East has remained a global hotspot for instability, along with long-standing ethnic and religious tensions. At the same time, the number of vehicles and machines that depend on fuel keeps growing, while oil is still a finite resource. That is one of the reasons the world has been gradually moving away from traditional energy sources and toward renewable energy. These renewable sources include solar power from sunlight, geothermal energy from heat inside the earth, wind power, biomass energy from plant material, and hydropower from flowing water. This shift is not just good for people, it is also good for the planet. It can help slow climate change by cutting greenhouse gas emissions. It can also improve human health and the quality of our environment by reducing air pollution and water pollution. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please give it a like. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more interesting videos. Thanks for watching.